All right, you little mathematicians. This video is to teach us how to write fractions as decimals and percents. Hopefully some of it will seem familiar, but we'll see. All right, so imagine you have a problem that says 96 out of 200 animals treated by a veterinarian are horses. Write 96 200ths as a decimal and a percent. So we have 96 over 200 as a fraction. Now, we know percent means out of 100. So if we can somehow get our fraction, find an equivalent fraction with 100 in the denominator, it becomes very easy to turn this into a percent. So in this case, that is simple for us to do because 200 divided by 2 is going to be 100, so we just have to divide 96 by 2 and find out what that equals. We'll get an equivalent fraction. Now it turns out 96 divided by 2 is 48. So 96 over 200, this fraction here, is equivalent to this fraction here, 48 out of 100. Now 48 out of 100 is the same as 48%, because percent just means out of 100. The other cool thing is when we were able to do this, it's very easy to turn into a decimal, because another way to read this fraction is as 48 hundredths. And that should hopefully ring a bell, because we can write a decimal like this. This is the hundredths place, and so this decimal right here just says 48 hundredths. Not all problems are quite that simple, though. Check this one out. 1/8 of the animals treated by the veterinarian are dogs. Write 1/8 as a decimal and as a percent. Now, 1/8, it turns out you can't multiply 8 by any whole number, by any integer, to turn it into 100. Just not going to work quite as easy as it did last time. So we're not able to take this sort of shortcut and just turn it into a fraction that has 100 as the denominator. So we'll have to try a different route. Let's try instead to turn our fraction into a decimal first. Hopefully you remember that all fractions are just division problems, and so one way we can turn this fraction into a decimal is to just do that division. So 8 goes into 1 0 times. Of course we'll have to add. I'm just going to go ahead and add a few zeros here. And it's going to go, we'll put our decimal point here. 8 goes into 10 once. And I'm not going to actually do all this long division just because it would take a lot of time. So I'll just kind of take a shortcut and tell you that if you divide 1 by 8, you eventually get this decimal, 0.125. So 1/8 equals 0.125. Now, if we know that, let's look at this decimal here. Another way to read this decimal instead of 0.125 is 125 thousandths. This is the thousandths place. So we'll take that decimal, 125 thousandths, and turn it into a fraction, 125 thousandths. Now what's kind of cool is we can see this won't tell us a percent yet, because percent says out of 100. But if we know out of 1,000, we know we can just divide by 10. 1,000 divided by 10 will give us 100 in our denominator here. So we'll also just need to divide by 10 up here in our numerator. We also know, as we saw in class, dividing by 10 is very easy. It's just sort of shifting the place value. So, or as some students like to say, move the decimal. So 125 divided by 10 is just 12.5. So again, what we know is that 1/8 is equivalent to 12.5 hundredths. And of course, now that we have it out of 100, we're ready to turn it into a percent. 12.5 out of 100 is the same as 12.5%. And so 1/8 is equal to 12.5%. Thanks a lot. Hope that makes sense. Practice a few problems, and we'll see you in class.